Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure and privilege to be with you, and particularly to follow Heather's presentation, because I think I pick up where she left off. So where are we today? So as Heather has given you past its prologue, the ITU is now a specialized agency of the United Nations, headquartered here in Geneva, Switzerland. We are the oldest, as you have heard, established in 1865. And as such, next year, ITU will be celebrating its 160th anniversary. We're established first to connect the world by telegraph. And as you've seen, we've moved on with the development of humanity to connecting the world in every form possible. ITU today has 194 members, 193 members of the United Nations, and we recently accepted a new member, Palau, to be our 194th ITU member. We also have over 1,000 members from the private sector. They are members of the different sectors, which you've heard about, and they are sector members, associates, which are members of a particular study group within the sector. We also have academia, who are members across the union. And we also have a special category, or lower paying category for small, medium enterprises. The ITU is located around the world. So in addition to our headquarters here in Geneva, we have regional offices in Brasilia, Addis Ababa, Cairo, Geneva, also for the Europe, Moscow and Bangkok. We also have area offices. We have an office in New York alongside with the UN, as well as a innovation center in New Delhi. As Heather mentioned, we now have, the ITU has 3 sectors. Our sister sectors, the telecommunications standardization sector, is responsible for developing standards on interconnection, security, and interoperability of telecommunications networks, systems, and services. The development sector is the sector that we, both I2T and I2R, work closely with in order to extend the information and communication technologies to all of the world's inhabitants, and our efforts through the development sector to bridge or narrow the digital divide. And what you will hear over the course of this week, and particularly the next few days, are the work in the I2R, which is the development of regulations and best practices for regional and international use of the radio spectrum and associated satellite orbits. So a little bit more about the radio communications sector. Our mission is incorporated and explained in the ITU Constitution and Convention. It encompasses the allocation of frequency bands for radio communication services and for radio frequencies, and that the ITU will also assign radio frequencies and associated orbital positions for space-based systems. That is the work of the World Radio Communications Conferences. The implementation of the result of that work, the allocation to services, is done through the implementation of the regulations and the regional agreements and the update of those instruments, as I mentioned, in the WRCs. That work is carried out collectively by the Bureau, particularly the Space and Terrestrial Services departments, along with supporting the work that happens at the national level. Most of the work of the ITU in radio communications has the key objective of elimination or avoidance of harmful interference. And so one of the other missions is a coordination of efforts to eliminate harmful interference between stations of different countries. That work is done by the administrations with the support of the Bureau and in accordance with the provisions of the radio regulations. And also you will hear about another part of our mission, the elaboration of recommendations, which also are developed by our ITR Study Groups Department, and you'll hear much more about that. And also, the last and final part of our mission is to provide technical assistance and capacity building support. And this seminar and the regional seminars that complement it are part of that process. A little bit more about the radio regulations. The key services that are, I'd say, umbrella to the various allocations of terrestrial and fixed mobile service, aeronautical and maritime services, space and the science services, as well as broadcasting. If you look at the radio spectrum and the associated satellite orbits for space services, you'll see that the international regulations have a key objective to ensure rational, efficient, and economical use of radio frequency spectrum and associated satellite orbit resources with equitable access for all countries. It also is a key to ensure the interoperability and operations of radio communication systems, and as I said, free from harmful interference. And the work done in the study groups department in particular is to help to ensure that the performance and the quality of the operating radio communication systems is sufficient for the needs of the community. And lastly, regulatory certainty that is established by these regulations and the recommendations and so forth underpins a multi-trillion-dollar industry of all of the various systems that are part of telecommunications. The radio regulations are right now, 4-volume set, last updated in WRC 2023 in Dubai, and available, as the director said, for download. It includes, as well as for purchase for the 4-volume set. It is focused on the regional and global spectrum harmonization as a key goal of the regulations. Again, creating economies of scale, enabling international roaming, facilitating emergency communications. A little bit about the structure of the sector. The WRC sits on top, and the Radio Regulations Board supports the implementation of the radio regulations. The ITUR also has an advisory group, as do each of the sectors. Our meetings, our radio conferences are preceded by and followed by conference preparatory meetings. And then lastly, we have the Radio Communications Assembly, which oversees the work of the ITR study groups, and you'll learn much more about that. All of this is supported by the work of the Bureau, headed by our director, and also with the four departments: Space Services Department, Terrestrial Services Department, the Study Groups Department, and the Informatics, Administration, and Publications Departments. And you'll hear from speakers in each one of those departments over the course of this seminar. The ITUR is always in the process of updating the radio regulations. At the end of every conference, we hold a conference preparatory meeting in order to prepare for the next conference. The study groups do their preparatory work in the intervening years, and then there's another conference preparatory meeting where the work of that is culminated in a new conference preparatory meeting report to that conference. The next conference is preceded by the RA. And as I said, our director, who you've heard from already, oversees the work across the ITUR and the work of the Bureau. You will hear more about the Radio Regulations Board in the next presentation, so I won't go over it too much, but only to say that there are 12 members of the board. The executive secretary is the director, and the board meets 3 to 4 times a year. CCIR is now the ITUR study groups with over 5,000 specialists dealing with many areas, and you'll learn more about those from our study groups department chair, the head of the study groups department, who will be later on this panel. A little bit more, and for the purpose of time, I'll just speed through. Lastly, we have the Radio Communication Advisory Group. As every sector has its own advisory group, ours reviews the priorities and strategies adopted for the sector, monitors the progress of the work, recommends measures to foster cooperation and coordination across between the ITU and other groups. It also advises the director on matters related to the work of the Bureau and to the Radio Communication Assembly. And on occasion, it will create correspondence groups in order to prepare for the next assembly. So with that, I bring a conclusion to this overview of the I2R.